A student's overview of the Ageless wisdom was carefully compiled from the following books by Alice A. Bailey. A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Esoteric Psychology, Volumes 1 and 2. Esoteric Healing. Esoteric Astrology. The Rays and the Initiations. Students are encouraged to download the free PDF version of this overview by following the link in the video's description, or to order a printed copy at cost from thebookpatch.com, but are advised to read the original, unabridged books in order to gain deeper insight into the ageless wisdom. Students are also invited to join our online study group at facebook.com/groups/students of the ageless wisdom. Chapter 41 Esoteric Psychology Volume 2. The coordination of the personality. We have considered, cursorily I realize, the fact that the ego appropriates to itself forms, through which expression can be made possible upon the various levels of divine manifestation. We observed that these forms, in due process of time, become embodiments of the will and purpose of their divine indweller. This indweller is the soul. As the evolutionary cycle runs its course, three developments take place. 1. The forms for expression are developed, little by little as a result of a. Successive incarnations. b. The impulse and consequent activity of desire. c. The interpretation of experience, intensifying and becoming more correct and adequate with time. 2. The self within, or identified with, the form nature. A. Becomes slowly conscious and intelligently active in the three worlds of human evolution. B. Shifts its focus of attention successively from one body to another, passing, in consciousness, into higher and higher states of awareness until the path of pursuit becomes the path of return, and desire for identification with form changes into aspiration for self-awareness. Later, comes identification with self on its own level of consciousness. C. Reorients itself and thus occultly leaves behind the hitherto desirable and aspires to that which has not hitherto been seen. 3. The aspirant passes through an intermediate stage in the process of evolution wherein divine attraction supersedes the attraction of the three worlds. This stage falls into 5 parts. 1. A period wherein duality and lack of control are realized. 2. A period wherein an assertion of self-control takes place, through the following process. A. Decentralization. B. Comprehension of the task ahead. C. An investigation, by the divine observer of the nature of form life. D. Divine expression, through the medium of the form, understandingly practiced. 3. A period wherein alignment takes place, and, through understanding and practice, the form is gradually subordinated to the requirements of the self, and begins to work in unison with self. 4. A period wherein the forms, aligned at increasingly frequent intervals, are a. Integrated into a functioning, active personality. B. Swept by the power of their own dominant, integrated, personality life. C. Gradually controlled by the self, and fused into an instrument for effective world service. D. Unified, in intent and purpose, with the soul. 5. A period wherein the personality ray and the soul ray are blended into one united energy, and the personality ray becomes a quality of, and complementary to, that of the soul, making soul purpose in the three worlds possible. It is thus that we progress, and in this manner form and consciousness, appearance and quality, are brought together and divine unity is achieved, thus ending the duality hitherto sensed, which up till this time has handicapped the aspirant. It will be wise to keep these three stages carefully in mind, because all the many modern psychological problems are founded upon a. The process of reorientation with its consequences of personality upheaval and disorders. b. The process of integration which is going on within the lower nature of intelligent humanity, leading inevitably to duality and conflict. c. The fusion of the personality and the soul in consciousness, with its physiological and personality effects, producing the problems and psychological dilemmas of the highly developed aspirant and disciple. In this stage, the so-called diseases of mystics become pronounced. End of page 209. 7 Ray techniques of integration. What I have to say concerning each ray and its work with the individuals upon it in integrating the personalities, will be conveyed by means of a formula of integration. This will itself be divided into 2 parts, dealing with those processes in time and space which bring about the integration of the personality. The words, covering the process in every case, are alignment, crisis, light, revelation, integration. Under the heading of each ray we shall have therefore 1. The formula of integration. 2. Its dual application of destruction and rebuilding, with a brief indication of the process and the result. 3. The final stage of the process wherein the man 1. Brings the 3 bodies into alignment. 2. Passes through a crisis of evocation, thus, as the Bhagavad Gita says, becoming manifest through the magical power of the soul. 3. Enters into a phase of light, wherein the man sees clearly the next step to be taken. 4. Receives the revelation of the plan and of what he has to do in connection with it. 5. Integrates the 3 bodies into one synthetic whole, and is therefore ready for the technique of fusion, which is suited to his ray type. This will bring us to our second point, which concerns the technique of fusion and the emergence into activity of the personality ray. Ray 1. The love of power must dominate. There must also be repudiation of those forms which wield no power. The word goes forth from soul to form, stand up. Press outward into life. Achieve a goal. For you, there must be not a circle, but a line. Prepare the form. Let the eyes look forward, not on either side. Let the ears be closed to all the outer voices, and the hands clenched, the body braced, and mind alert. Emotion is not used in furthering of the plan. Love takes its place. Such is the pattern of the thought and the process of the life of the man upon the first ray, who is seeking first of all to control his personality, and then to dominate his environment. His progress is that of achieved control, that of being controlled, and then again controlling. At first, his motive is that of selfish, separative achievement, and then comes failure to be satisfied. A higher achievement then takes place as a result of the service of the plan, until the time eventually comes when the first ray man can be trusted to be God's destroying angel, the angel who brings life through the destruction of the form. Such integrated personalities are frequently ruthless at first, selfish, ambitious, self-centered, cruel, one-pointed, implacable, undeviating, aware of implications, of significances, and of the results of action, but, at the same time, unalterable and undeviating, moving forward to their purposes. They destroy and tear down in order to rise to greater heights upon the ruin they have wrought. They do thus rise. They trample on other men and upon the destinies of the little person. They integrate their surroundings into an instrument for their will and move relentlessly forward upon their own occasions. This type of man will be found expressing these qualities in all walks of life and spheres of action, and is a destroying force in his home, business, or in the nation. All this is made possible because the first ray has at this stage integrated the personality vehicles and has achieved their simultaneous control. The man functions as a whole. This process and method of work brings him eventually to a point of crisis, a crisis based upon the unalterable fact of his essentially divine nature or being, which cannot remain satisfied with the gaining of power in a personality sense and in a material world. Power selfishly used exhausts its user and evokes a display of power antagonistic to him. He is thereby destroyed, because he has destroyed. He is separated off from his fellow men because he has been isolated and separative in his nature. End of page 210. This crisis of evocation brings him to an inner point of change which involves an alteration in his direction, a change of method, and a different attitude. The change of direction takes him back to the center of his being, the heart. A change of method takes place, for, instead of moving straight forward, he waits in patience and seeks to feel. A change of attitude can be noted, for he reaches out his arms to his fellow men, to the greater whole, and thus becomes inclusive. Standing thus in quietness at the center, and searching within himself for responsiveness to his environment, he thus loses sight of self and the light breaks in. It is as if a curtain were raised. In that light, the first thing which is revealed to him is the devastating sight of that which he has destroyed. He is subjected to what has esoterically been called the light which shocks. Slowly and laboriously, using every power of his aligned personality and, in his realized desperation, calling in the power of his soul, he proceeds one-pointedly to rebuild that which he has destroyed. In rebuilding, he lifts the entire structure onto a higher level than any he has hitherto touched. Through this type of personality, his first-ray soul can demonstrate, because the disciple has recovered feeling, gained divine emotion, and filled his waiting heart with love. In such cases as this, the astral body is usually on the second ray, the mental body upon the fourth ray, and the physical body upon the sixth ray. This naturally tends to balance or upset the intensity of the first ray vibrations of the personality and soul. It is in the third life of reorientation that he gains the reward for the arresting of his selfish efforts, and aspects of the plan are then revealed to him. Ray 2. Again I stand, a point within a circle and yet myself. The love of love must dominate, not love of being loved. The power to draw unto oneself must dominate, but into the worlds of form that power must someday fail to penetrate. This is the first step towards a deeper search. The word goes forth from soul to form, release thyself from all that stands around, for it has naught for thee, so look to me. I am the one who builds, sustains and draws thee on and up. Look unto me with eyes of love, and seek the path which leads from the outer circle to the point. I, at the point, sustain. I, at the point, attract. I, at the point, direct and choose and dominate. I, at the point, love all, drawing them to the center and moving forward with the traveling points towards that great center where the one point stands. What mean you by that word? In reference to this second ray, it is advisable to recollect that all the rays are but the sub-rays of the second ray of love wisdom. The one in the center, who is the point within the circle of manifestation, has three major qualities: life or activity in form, love and the power of abstraction. It is these last two qualities of deity with which we are concerned in these formulas and, in connection with the second ray, the dualities of attraction and abstraction emerge, both latent and both capable of perfected activity in their own field. There comes ever the moment in the life of the aspirant when he begins to consider with wonder the significance of that familiar reaction of finding no satisfaction in the familiar things. The old life of desire for well-known forms of existence and expression ceases to attract his interest. The pull or attractive power of the one at the center, who is his true self, also fails. It is not yet a familiar call. The aspirant is left, unsatisfied and with a deepening sense of futility and emptiness, pendant upon the periphery of the divine ring path not which he has himself established. It is at this point and in this situation that he must reflect upon and use this formula. End of page 211. There comes ever the moment in the life of the aspirant when he begins to consider with wonder the significance of that familiar reaction of finding no satisfaction in the familiar things. The old life of desire for well-known forms of existence and expression ceases to attract his interest. The pull or attractive power of the one at the center, who is his true self, also fails. It is not yet a familiar call. The aspirant is left, unsatisfied and with a deepening sense of futility and emptiness, pendant upon the periphery of the divine ring path not which he has himself established. It is at this point and in this situation that he must reflect upon and use this formula. It is this period of crisis which presents the major problem to the advanced aspirants of today and evokes consequently the concern of the psychiatrist and psychologist. Instead of treating the difficulty as a sign of progress and as indicating a relatively high point in the evolutionary scale and therefore a reason for a sense of encouragement, it is treated as a disease of the mind and of the personality. Light reveals, and the stage of revelation now follows. This light upon the way produces vision, and the vision shows itself as 1. A vision, first of all, of defects. The light reveals the man to himself, as he is, or as the soul sees the personality. 2. A vision of the next step ahead, which, when taken, indicates the procedure next to be followed. 3. A vision of those who are traveling the same way. 4. A glimpse of the guardian angel who is the dim reflection of the angel of the presence, the solar angel, which walks with each human being from the moment of birth until death, embodying as much of the available light as the man, at any given moment upon the path of evolution, can use and express. 5. A fleeting glimpse, at high and rare moments, of the angel of the presence itself. 6. At certain times and when deemed necessary, a glimpse of the master of a man's ray group. This falls usually into two categories of experience and causes. A. In the early stages and whilst under illusion and glamour, that which is contacted is a vision of the astral, illusory form upon the planes of glamour and illusion. This is not, therefore, a glimpse of the master himself, but of his astral symbol, or of the form built by his devoted disciples. B. The master himself is contacted. This can take place when the disciple has effected the needed integrations of the threefold lower nature. It is at this moment of integration as the result of revelation that there comes the fusion of the personality ray with the egoic ray. Ray 3. Pulling the threads of life, I stand, enmeshed within my self-created glamour. Surrounded am I by the fabric I have woven. I see naught else. The love of truth must dominate, not love of my own thoughts, or love of my ideas or forms. Love of the ordered process must control, not love of my own wild activity. The word goes forth from soul to form, be still. Learn to stand silent, quiet and unafraid. I, at the center, am. Look up along the line and not along the many lines which, in the space of eons, you have woven. These hold thee prisoner. Be still. Rush not from point to point, nor be deluded by the outer forms and that which disappears. Behind the forms, the weaver stands and silently he weaves. It is this enforced quiet which brings about the true alignment. This is the quiet not of meditation but of living. The aspirant upon the third ray is apt to waste much energy in perpetuating the glamorous forms with which he persistently surrounds himself. To offset this, he must stand quiet at the center and, for a time at any rate, cease from weaving. He must no longer make opportunities for himself but, meeting the opportunities which come his way, a very different thing, apply himself to the need to be met. This is a very different matter and swings into activity a very different psychology. When he can do this and be willing to achieve divine idleness, from the angle of a glamoured third-ray attitude, he will discover that he has suddenly achieved alignment. This alignment naturally produces a crisis which is characterized by two qualities. 1. The quality of deep distress. This is a period of difficulty and of real concern because it dawns upon his consciousness how useless, relatively, are his weaving and his manipulations, and how much of a problem he presents to the other weavers. 2. The quality which might be expressed as the determination to stand in spiritual being. End of page 212. This crisis evokes understanding, which is, as many will recognize, an aspect of light. The aspirant slowly begins to work with the plan as it is, and not as he thinks it is. As he works, revelation comes, and he sees clearly what he has to do. Usually this entails first of all a disentangling and a release from his own ideas. This process takes much time, being commensurate with the time wasted in building up the age-long glamour. The third-ray aspirant is always slower to learn than the second-ray, just as the first-ray aspirant learns more rapidly than the second-ray. When, however, he has least to be quiet and still, he can achieve his goal with greater rapidity. The second-ray aspirant has to achieve the quiet which is ever present at the heart of a storm or the center of a whirlpool. The third-ray aspirant has to achieve the quiet which is like to that of a quiet mill pond, which he much dislikes to do. Having, however, learned to do it, integration then takes place. The man stands ready to play his part. We will now take the formulas which will embody the techniques of integration for the 4 minor rays, and glimpse the possibilities which they may unfold. We will emphasize in connection with each of them the same 5 stages of the technique we are studying: alignment, crisis, light, revelation and integration. Ray 4. Midway I stand between the forces which oppose each other. Longing am I for harmony and peace, and for the beauty which results from unity. I see the two. I see naught else but forces ranged opposing, and I, the one, who stands within the circle at the center. Peace I demand. My mind is bent upon it. Oneness with all I seek, yet form divides. War upon every side I find, and separation. Alone I stand and am. I know too much. The love of unity must dominate, and love of peace and harmony. Yet not that love, based on a longing for relief, for peace to self, for unity because it carries with it that which is pleasantness. The word goes forth from soul to form. Both sides are one. There is no war, no difference and no isolation. The warring forces seem to war from the point at which you stand. Move on apace. See truly with the opened eye of inner vision and you will find, not two but one, not war but peace, not isolation but a heart which rests upon the center. Thus shall the beauty of the Lord shine forth. The hour is now. The function of this intermediate group is to embody a type of energy, which is that of at-one-ment. This is essentially a healing force which brings all forms to an ultimate perfection through the power of the indwelling life, with which it becomes perfectly atoned. This is brought about by the soul or consciousness aspect, qualified by the ray in question. The relation of the human family to the divine scheme, as it exists, is that of bringing into close rapport the 3 higher kingdoms upon our planet and the 3 lower kingdoms of nature, thus acting as a clearing house for divine energy. The service humanity is to render is that of producing unity, harmony, and beauty in nature, through blending into one functioning, related unity the soul in all forms. This is achieved individually at first, then it takes place in group formation, and finally it demonstrates through an entire kingdom in nature. When this takes place, the 4th creative hierarchy will be controlled predominantly by the 4th ray, by which I mean that the majority of its egos will have 4th ray personalities, thus facilitating the task of fusion, and the consciousness of its advanced units will function normally upon the 4th plane of Buddhic energy or intuitional awareness. When this 4th ray alignment is produced and the disciple becomes aware of it, a crisis is evoked. The phrase "the disciple becomes aware of it" is significant, for it indicates that states of consciousness can exist and the disciple remain unaware of them. However, until they are brought down into the area of the brain and are recognized by the disciple in waking, physical consciousness, they remain subjective and are not usable. They are of no practical benefit to the man upon the physical plane. The crisis thus precipitated leads to fresh illumination when it is properly handled. These crises are produced by the bringing together, oft the clashing together, of the higher forces of the personality and soul energy. They cannot therefore be produced at a low stage of evolutionary development, in which low-grade energies are active and the personality is neither integrated nor of a high grade and character. End of page 213. This fourth ray crisis, evoked by a right understanding and a right use of the fourth ray formula, produces the following sequential results. 1. A sense of isolation. Putting this into more modern language, a complex is produced of the same nature as that which temporarily overcame Elijah. He was overwhelmed with a sense of his clarity of vision in relation to the problem with which he was faced, of his unique response to it, and also with a sense of aloneness which devastated him. 2. A sense of despairing futility. The forces arraigned against the disciple seem so great and his equipment so inadequate and feeble. 3. A determination to stand in the midst and, if not victorious, at least to refuse to admit defeat, taking with determination the position which St. Paul expressed in the words, having done all, to stand. 4. A sudden recognition of the warrior within, who is invisible and omnipotent but who can only now begin his real work when the personality is aligned, the crisis recognized, and the will to victory is present. We would do well to ponder on this. It is valuable also to remember that this revelation comes to the race in 3 stages. 1. Individually, when the disciple relinquishes the fight in order to stand, thereby discovering victory ahead, achieving oneness with the enemy, the warrior and the one. 2. In group formation. This approach to the revelation is today going on in the world, and is producing a moment of extreme crisis in connection with the work of the new group of world servers. Their moment of crisis lies immediately ahead. 3. In the human family as a whole. This revelation will come to the race at the end of the age, and with it we need not for the moment, therefore, concern ourselves. It is essentially the revelation of the plan as a whole, embodying the various aspects of the plan as, from cycle to cycle, the race has grasped the smaller aspects and revelations and succeeded eventually in bringing them into concrete manifestation. It is a revelation of the purposes of deity, past, present and future purposes, as grasped by those who have developed the divine aspects and are, consequently, in a position to understand. This series of spiritual happenings or unfoldments of consciousness in the life of the individual and the group produces a definite integration upon the 3 levels of personality work: mental, emotional and physical. It also lays the ground for those processes of fusion which will blend the rays of the personality and of the soul. If you will carry this concept of integration, achieved upon the 3 levels of the 3 worlds of human endeavor, into the activities and relationships of groups, you will find much of interest and of informative value anent the work of the new group of world servers. Ray 5. Towards me I draw the garment of my God. I see and know his form. I take that garment, piece by piece. I know its shape and color, its form and type, its parts component and its purposes and use. I stand amazed, I see naught else. I penetrate the mysteries of form, but not the mystery. I see the garment of my God. I see naught else. Love of the form is good but only as the form is known for what it is, the veiling vase of life. Love of the form must never hide the life which has its place behind, the one who brought the form into the light of day, and preserves it for his use, the one who lives, and loves and serves the form, the one who is. The word goes forth from soul to form, behind that form, I am. Know me. Cherish and know and understand the nature of the veils of life, but know as well the one who lives. Know me. Let not the forms of nature, their processes and powers prevent thy searching for the mystery which brought the mysteries to thee. Know well the form, but leave it joyously and search for me. End of page 214. Detach thy thought from form and find me waiting underneath the veils, the many-sided shapes, the glamours and the thought forms which hide my real self. Be not deceived. Find me. Know me. Then use the forms which then will neither veil nor hide the self, but will permit the nature of that self to penetrate the veils of life, revealing all the radiance of God, His power and magnetism, revealing all there is of form, of life, of beauty and usefulness. The mind reveals the one. The mind can blend and fuse the form and life. Thou art the one. Thou art the form. Thou art the mind. Know this. This fifth ray formula is of exceeding potency at this time and should be used often, but with care, by those upon this line of divine energy. It has most powerful integrating properties, but the person who employs it must be mindful to visualize and hold in his mind's eye the even, balanced, equilibrious distribution of the divine energy set in motion by the use of this fifth ray formula, so that the three aspects of the spiritual entity concerned, the mind, the one who uses it, the self, and the form nature, may be equally stimulated. This statement means, for instance, that if all the emphasis of the soul energy available is poured into the lower nature, the natural man, it might result in the shattering of the form and the consequent uselessness of the man in service. If all of it, on the other hand, is poured into the receiving chalice of the astral nature, it might only serve to intensify the glamour and to produce fanaticism. 1. The lower psychic man, physical and astral, must receive a balanced quota of force. 2. The mind must receive its share of illuminating energy. 3. A third part of that energy must be retained within the periphery of the soul nature to balance thus the other two. This is a replica of the experience of the monad when coming into manifestation, for the monad retains a measure of energy within itself. It sends energy forth which is anchored in that center of energy which we call a soul. Still more energy pours forth also, via the soul, for the production of a human being, an expression of the soul upon the physical plane, just as the soul is an expression of the monad upon the mental plane, and both are expressions also of that one monad. The use of this formula, which produces eventually a definite relation between the soul and the various aspects of the form, brings about a needed alignment, and again, as in the other cases considered previously, produces also, and evokes, a crisis. This crisis must be regarded as producing two lesser crises in the consciousness of the personality. 1. That in which there comes the achieving of equilibrium and what might be called a balanced point of view. This balanced vision causes much difficulty and leads to what might be called the ending of the joy life and of desire. This is not a pleasant experience to the disciple. It leads to much aridness in the life experience and to a sense of loss. It often takes much wise handling, and frequently time elapses before the disciple emerges on the other side of the experience. 2. This balanced condition in which the not-self and the self, the life aspect and the form aspect, are seen as they essentially are, through the aid and the use of the discriminating faculty of the mind, leads eventually to a crisis of choice, and to the major task of the disciple's life. This is the detaching of himself from the grip of form experience, and consciously, rapidly, definitely and with intention preparing himself for the great expansions of initiation. When this dual crisis is over and that which it has evoked has been rightly handled, then the light streams forth, leading to the revelation of the relationships of form to soul. These two are then seen as one in a sense never before realized and are then regarded as possessing a relation quite different to the theoretical relationships posited in ordinary occult and religious work. It will be apparent, therefore, how a new relationship and a new type of integration then becomes possible and how the mind quality of the fifth ray, critical, analytical, separative and over-discriminating, can become, what in the Middle Ages it used to be called, the common sense. When this takes place, form and life are indeed one unity and the disciple uses the form at will as the instrument of the soul for the working out of the plans of God. End of page 215. Ray 6. I see a vision. It satisfies desire, it feeds and stimulates its growth. I lay my life upon the altar of desire, the seen, the sensed, that which appeals to me, the satisfaction of my need, a need for that which is material, for that which feeds emotion, that satisfies the mind, that answers my demand for truth, for service, and my vision of the goal. It is the vision which I see, the dream I dream, the truth I hold, the active form which meets my need, that which I grasp and understand. My truth, my peace, my satisfied desire, my dream, my vision of reality, my limited ideal, my finite thought of God, for these I struggle, fight and die. Love of the truth must always be. Desire and aspiration, reaching out for that which is material or soaring upward towards the vision of reality must ever find their satisfaction. For this men work, driving themselves and irking others. They love the truth as they interpret it, they love the vision and the dream, forgetting that the truth is limited by mind, narrow and set, one-pointed, not inclusive, forgetting that the vision touches but the outer fringe of mystery, and veils and hides reality. The word goes out from soul to form, run not so straight. The path that you are on leads to the outer circle of the life of God, the line goes forward to the outer rim. Stand at the center. Look on every side. Die not for outer forms. Forget not God, who dwells behind the vision. Love more your fellow men. It will be apparent, therefore, that the sixth ray disciple has first of all to achieve the arduous task of dissociating himself from his vision, from his adored truth, from his loved ideals, from his painted picture of himself as the devoted follower and disciple, following his master unto death, if need be, forcing himself, from very love of form, and forcing all his fellowmen to dedicate themselves to that which he sees. It must be recognized that he lacks the wide love of the second-ray disciple, which is a reflection of the love of God. He is all the time occupied with himself, with his work, his sacrifice, his task, his ideas, and his activities. He, the devotee, is lost in his devotion. He, the idealist, is driven by his idea. He, the follower, runs blindly after his master, his chosen ideal, and loses himself in the chaos of his uncontrolled aspirations and the glamour of his own thoughts. The problem, therefore, of the sixth ray aspirant is to divorce himself from the thraldom of form, though not from form, and to stand quietly at the center, just as the third ray disciple has to learn to do. There he learns breadth of vision and a right sense of proportion. These two qualities he always lacks until the time comes when he can take his stand and there align himself with all visions, all forms of truth, all dreams of reality, and find behind them all, God and his fellow men. Then and only then can he be trusted to work with the plan. The alignment evoked by this peaceful standing still naturally produces a crisis, and it is, as usual, a most difficult one for the aspirant to handle. It is a crisis which seems to leave him destitute of incentive, of motive, of sensation, of appreciation by others, and of life purpose. The idea of my truth, my master, my idea, my way leaves him, and as yet he has nothing to take its place. Being sixth ray, and therefore linked with the world of astral psychic life, the sixth plane, he is peculiarly sensitive to his own reactions and to the ideas of others where he and his truths are concerned. The problem of the disciple upon this ray is greatly increased by the fact that the sixth ray has been the dominant ray for so many centuries and is only now passing out. Therefore the idealistic, fanatical thought forms, built up by the devotees upon this ray, are powerful and persistent. The world today is fanatically idealistic, and this is one of the causes of the present world situation. It is hard for the man who is the one-pointed devotee to free himself from the prevailing influence, for the energy thus generated feeds that which he seeks to leave behind. If he can, however, grasp the fact that devotion, expressing itself through a personality, engenders fanaticism, and that fanaticism is separative, frequently cruel, often motivated by good ideals, but that it usually overlooks the immediate reality by rushing off after a self-engendered vision of truth, he will go far along the way to solving his problem. If he can then realize that devotion, expressing itself through the soul, is love and inclusiveness plus understanding, then he will learn eventually to free himself from the idealism of others and of himself, and will identify himself with the loving working out of God's plan. End of page 216. Ray 7. I seek to bring the two together. The plan is in my hands. How shall I work? Where lay the emphasis? In the far distance stands the one who is. Here at my hand is form, activity, substance, and desire. Can I relate these and fashion thus a form for God? Where shall I send my thought, my power, the word that I can speak? I, at the center, stand, the worker in the field of magic. I know some rules, some magical controls, some words of power, some forces which I can direct. What shall I do? Danger there is. The task that I have undertaken is not easy of accomplishment, yet I love power. I love to see the forms emerge, created by my mind, and do their work, fulfill the plan and disappear. I can create. The rituals of the temple of the Lord are known to me. How shall I work? Love not the work. Let love of God's eternal plan control your life, your mind, your hand, your eye. Work towards the unity of plan and purpose which must find its lasting place on earth. Work with the plan, focus upon your share in that great work. The word goes forth from soul to form, stand in the center of the pentagram, drawn upon that high place in the east within the light which ever shines. From that illumined center work. Leave not the pentagram. Stand steady in the midst. Then draw a line from that which is without to that which is within and see the plan take form. This great and powerful ray is now coming into manifestation, and it brings new energies to man of so potent a nature that the disciples of today must move and work with care. They are literally handling fire. It is the children who are now coming into incarnation who will eventually work more safely and more correctly with these new potencies. There is much, however, to be done in the meantime, and the disciples upon this seventh ray can ponder on this formula and seek their own interpretation of it, endeavoring first of all to stand in the east, within the protection of the pentagram. As he realizes the task to be carried out and the nature of the work to be done by the seventh ray worker, and appreciates the fact that it is the magical work of producing those forms on earth which will embody the Spirit of God, and in our particular time, this necessitates the building of new forms. Each seventh ray disciple will see himself as a relating agent, as the one who stands in the midst of the building processes, attending to his portion of the task. This, if really grasped and deeply considered, will have the effect of producing alignment. The moment that this alignment is achieved, then let the disciple remember that it will mean a tremendous inflow of power, of energy from both the aligned points, from both directions, converging upon him, as he stands in the midway place. Ponder deeply upon this truth, for it is this fact which always evokes a seventh ray crisis. It will be obvious what this crisis is. If the man concerned is materially minded, selfishly ambitious and unloving, the inpouring energy will stimulate the personality nature, and he will immediately be warring furiously with all that we mean by the instinctual, psychic, intellectual nature. When all these three are stimulated, the disciple is often for a time swung off the center into a maelstrom of magical work of the lower kind, sex magic and many forms of black magic. He is glamored by the beauty of his motive, and deceived by the acquired potency of his personality. If, however, he is warned of the danger and aware of the possibility, he will stand steady at the center within the mystical pentagram, and there suffer until the light in the east rises upon his darkness, discovering him still at the midway point. Then comes the revelation of the plan, for this has ever to be the motivating power of the seventh ray disciple. He works on earth, upon the outer plane of manifestation, with the construction of those forms through which the divine will can express itself. In the field of religion, he works in collaboration with the second and sixth ray disciples. In the field of government he labors, building those forms which will enable the first ray activity to be expressed. In the field of business, he cooperates with third ray energies and the executives of the plan. In the field of science, he aids and assists the fifth ray workers. He is the expression of the builder, and the creator, bringing into outer manifestation God's plan. He begins, however, with himself, and seeks to bring into expression the plan of his soul in his own setting and worldly situation. Until he can do this, he is unable to stand in the east within the pentagram. End of page 217. It is occultly said that the pentagram is open and a place of danger when the disciple knows not order within his own life, and when the ritual of the soul is not imposed and its rhythm not obeyed. The pentagram is closed when order is restored and the ritual of the master is imposed. The writing goes on to say that if the disciple enters through the open pentagram, he dies. If he passes over into the closed pentagram, he lives. If he transmutes the pentagram into a ring of fire, he serves the plan. End of chapter 41.